Coming up on the Empowered Woman podcast.
Think about your podcast like a business. It seems like a passion project right now, but what if it was your, you know, seven-figure business that you're running every year? And what would you normally do with a seven-figure business? Think about your exit strategy or what you're going to do or what your legacy is going to be. Think of your podcast that way too.
Welcome to the Empowered Woman podcast, the #1 show on visibility strategies for women entrepreneurs. If you want to get empowered to be seen, stand out on social media, stages, TV, and more to make an impact with your voice and business, you're in the right place. I'm so glad that you're here. My name is Marcia Spurk, and I'm your host, professional singer and visibility strategist. Welcome again, and let's dive into today's episode. Hi, Bev. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so you're bringing a very exciting topic that is very meta for what we're doing here. So I'm excited, especially with the visibility portion, which is a lot of my focus, getting especially women entrepreneurs out there talking about their businesses. But anyways, I digress. Tell us who you are and what you do.
I'm Bev Hampson. I live on Vancouver Island, and I am the co-founder and CEO of a multimedia company called Category 3. We are female focused on female podcasters. We primarily dive into advertising, where about 3.5 years ago, I started the agency to really support female podcasters with their goals, their revenue goals, and really wanting to spotlight them when it came to brands and sponsorships and trying to get more money in the door for them so that they could either obviously become full-time podcasters or, bring in that revenue for other pieces of their companies. So we primarily focus on our female podcasters, and then we require our podcasters to have an audience of women over 40. So we really specialize in products that are for perimenopause, menopause, weight loss for women over 40, thyroid issues, any of those. So we're very niche. We're very specific in what we do, but it's so fun. And we find that women, of course, as they're heading into perimenopause and postmenopause, they need a lot of support, and we really want to spotlight them and make sure that we're finding the best products that their influencers and their health experts can bring to them. So
yeah, that is amazing. I love how niche it is. And so needed as well. And I want to hear the backstory about starting the business and then transitioning into this piece, why this niche, all the things. So give us the beginnings.
Sure. So a million years ago, I worked in radio advertising, local radio advertising on Vancouver Island, and loved that. And then about 12 years ago, I wanted to cycle into podcasting on a little bit more of a global scale. I worked on a radio show that was syndicated in Taiwan from Canada. So we were recording in Canada and it was syndicated in Taiwan. And I thought, that's so cool. And how do you do more of that? Podcasting. And podcasting was still pretty new. There wasn't a whole lot of shows out there. So I was able to segue into podcasting. And then a couple years after that, I was able to really get into health and wellness. And so specifically, I worked for a couple quite large shows. I worked for Bulletproof Coffee at that time, which is a coffee company out of Seattle that really specialized in helping women actually, become more full from their coffee and using butter and MCT oil, that sort of thing. So anyways, that was sort of the segue into health and wellness, and specifically female health and wellness. And I thought, this is such a great space. So continued to work in that space for a long time, doing a lot of sponsorships, advertising, and especially when podcast sponsorships weren't really a thing. It wasn't really, an area that brands were diving into. And so was able to really focus on that area, grow some of the podcasts that I was working on through sponsorships and partnerships that were really authentic and organic. And what I found in health and wellness is that there was such a high level of engagement with the audience and their podcaster. And whether they were a doctor or a health influencer, it doesn't matter. The audience was so engaged with what that host had to say in their opinion, and especially the trialing and the endorsement of any brands that they would use, which is quite different than, I would say, maybe your regular horror podcast, or if you're a true crime podcast enthusiast, right? Sometimes you don't know who the host is. And if they have an ad, it might be what we call dynamically inserted, which is not host read. It's just a programmatic ad that talks about something maybe super random. It's a horror podcast, but yet you're hearing an ad for Chevy or Walmart or any of those. So not necessarily like a crazy alignment. In health and wellness, we have to have that alignment, which
Yeah.
is really cool. And that's what I loved about it
Mm.
was the host has to organically and authentically align with their brands. They have to do the ad, it has to be host read in that regard. So there was just this really great level of integrity that came with advertising in that space, and so was able to really build on that. And then, I spent many years working on male podcasts and listening to men talk about women's hormones.
Mm.
And I just hit the roof and I was like, this is it. We're not doing this anymore. And so, working on those podcasts allowed me to meet so many other female podcasters who were phenomenal. And unfortunately just didn't know anything about advertising and didn't even know it was a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And we find that in so many spaces on podcasts where, they don't, a lot of podcasters think they have to be somewhere around, 1 million downloads a month for some reason to monetize. And that's crazy. You can be way less. You could be even less than 50,000 downloads, less than 25,000 downloads to advertise.
Mm-hmm.
So it came into what really started with category 3 was, hey, we're going to support these female podcasters, but we're actually also going to teach them how to do their own advertising with the idea that they would eventually leave us and go do their own advertising. That was really the goal. Well, it's been 3.5 years. We've only sunset 2 of our advertisers, and it was really honestly, they just got so large in their space, they needed an in-house person.
Wow.
So we haven't offloaded as many podcasters as we wanted to, but that's okay because we love them
Yeah,
and they're really fun to work with. So
that is so great. And I love the teaching portion because that's definitely where I want to go with this conversation as people are hearing. Because typically, for the larger public that don't have a show, we talk about podcasting as an opportunity for entrepreneurs to get more visible, right? And then there are other people that really feel the pull to create their own show. And then they hit this point where they're like, I would love to make money from this. It's not just content that I'm putting out there. And a lot of people say, yeah, you monetize your show via sharing your offers so people can connect with you that way. And that's one way. But the whole advertising sponsorship is a little bit nebulous. So I'd love to, and there's the assumptions, right? I need to be like a Joe Rogan. That's my only solution to be able to make money. So I would love to hear from you, like how can podcast hosts position their show to be able to have sponsorship in terms of numbers, in terms of the branding, or even the connections, like where can they go?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple different ways. Of course, we're omni-channel in terms of advertising, omni-channel, multi-channel, campaign 360, whichever terminology that you prefer. So essentially, that means when we work with a podcaster, we don't just take a look at monetization for just their podcast. We can also take a look at their socials, if they have a blog, if they have a newsletter, if they have TikTok. And so we will actually create campaigns for brands based on their entire platform, if you would.
Nice.
So, for example, we have brand X and they come and say, I really love podcaster A and I would really love to work with them. Great. We go through a vetting process with the podcaster, get them whether they already authentically and organically love this brand or if it's something new for them, we got to take them through a trial process. And then we'll actually create a campaign for brand X and say, okay, great. Podcaster A has like I said, a podcast. We can do a sponsored episode where you can bring on the guest. You can do pre-roll ads, which are ads that live at the beginning of the show. A mid-roll ad lives in the middle of the show. If you have been podcasting for a long time, maybe you have what's called a back catalog, which is all of those older episodes of your show. You can actually resell advertising on all of those based on your metrics. So typically, a podcaster who has 100,000 downloads a month, maybe, probably half of them are from older episodes. So anything that's been released 90 days ago until the beginning of your catalog. So you can actually keep remonetizing those options. Then we also, of course, have social media, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook membership groups, whatever that podcaster has. We require, from an agency standpoint, because we're commission based, we do require our podcasters that come on board with us to obviously have a certain number because our team needs to make money.
Yes.
But I always emphasize with our podcasters, hey, just because you're not at the level that we need you to be for us, you can still monetize yourself and take 100% of that revenue right at that point. and work with a couple brands. Further to that, if we have a podcaster that's never monetized before, then we ask them to take a look at affiliate. So affiliate, of course, is commission sharing, revenue sharing. Again, take a look at what's in your house, what's in your closet, what's in your pantry, what are the products that you love. Sign up for an affiliate with them, whether that's a 15, 20, 25% revenue share, get your discount code to offer your audience and run some ads on your podcast. Not only is that going to help you build a relationship with said brand that could potentially turn into a sponsorship down the road, but also it's going to give you some metrics and some case studies to show brands as you're going through and saying, hey, yeah, I ran a campaign with brand X, and this is what they saw over a 3-month period working with me in terms of sales. So you can use that information as you go forward. And then also, like I said, those affiliate brands, they're your low-hanging fruit when it turns into sponsorship. And they already know who you are. You've already built a relationship with them. We have tons of podcasters that they'll do that for years. They'll do affiliate because there's no ceiling on your affiliate. You just keep making more money. Whereas your sponsorship fees, they're a flat fee, unless of course you're doing a hybrid deal, which is flat fee plus affiliate, which I highly recommend for any podcaster to do. So we take them through all of those options. So whether it's a good fit for us as an agency, doesn't matter. We'll still take you through all the tools to do it yourself.
Nice. That's amazing. I love all that insight. There's different stepping stones depending on where you're at, depending on what you want, and things to look for. In terms of like through the years, because podcasting has had different seasons, right? With now, I always say there's probably a podcast being born every day or every minute. People launch. They don't necessarily stick with it because it's hard to keep going. But it's become something more popular that people, start and go into. What are some of the trends that you've observed in terms of sponsorship and what didn't work or used to work and doesn't work? And is it a result of social media platforms or?
Hey, let me ask you a question. Would you like to be my next guest on the Empowered Woman podcast? Do you have a story you'd like to share? Want more visibility for your business on a show ranked in the top 0.5% in the world? Well, then head on over to martasburke.com/podcast guest for more information.
Yeah, it's really touch points. So what we call a touch point is anytime that your audience hears or sees a brand that you're working with. And so over the year, every year it changes, and we do monitor that trend very closely. So for example, in 2025, it was 9 touch points within a 3-month period that your audience had to hear that brand on your platform, and not necessarily your podcast. It could be social, it could be newsletter, blog, whatever. It had to be 9. In 2026, it's 15. It's 15 touch points now. And we used to also monitor cost. So for example, if you were working with a brand that was, for example, a supplement under $100, you could have less touch points with that supplement over that 3-year period. If you were working with something larger like a cold plunge or a sauna or something that was just a lot more expensive, over $1,000 plus, you would need more touch points over that period of time because it was so much more expensive. We still have that, but we've kind of gone away because we find that podcasters have such specific audiences now, and usually our podcasters can tell, hey, my audience is paycheck to paycheck. They're not going to be able to buy a sauna. We're really looking at supplement and food-based products. That's going to be their thing, or skincare. That's going to be their thing. So we're at 15 touch points, no matter what type of brand or product it is at this point. I'm nervous to see what 2027 is going to bring. And that has to do with so much advertising, right? So that's really been the trend. So during COVID was really when advertising blew up. I've been doing podcast advertising since 2015. But COVID was when, every brand, they weren't doing events, they weren't doing billboards. They weren't, they were like, let's lean into podcasting. Let's do that, which was great. It gave us a really good opportunity to also teach brands how to media buy on a podcasting platform. So that was a really great, obviously I'm a teacher, love to teach everybody how to do everything.
Yes.
Because I want more people to do it, because I think it's so great. And if you do it correctly, then you can keep replicating it, which is great. And just with some tweaks over the years. But during COVID, podcast advertising just blew up, and you could do, a tester of a couple ads on a podcast, and you could really see what ROI looked like over, 3 or 4 ads on a podcast, as opposed to buying all these, the multi-channel or the 15 touch points. We didn't need so many touch points back then. Now we do, because we have so many brands that are doing podcast advertising. We've got this very specific fine line of podcasters who are really authentic and organic in terms of what brands they work with. And then there's other podcasters that don't care. They're like, I'll have anything on my show. It doesn't matter. And that's totally fine. Like no judgment there, but it really dilutes your audience's level of like what they want to, what they're going to endorse from you and what they're not. So that would be my biggest trend that I follow year after year after year.
Okay.
And like you said, up until a couple of years ago, like even 3 years ago, it was 2 million podcasts a year were being created. 2 million a year. That's insane. 0.0002% made it to episode 3.
Wow.
So they would be created.
Wild.
They would be there, which is now whenever I have an influencer or a doctor or somebody that says, hey, I really want to start a podcast, which of course I'm like, absolutely. You have something to say, start a podcast. And I always say, think about your first 100 episodes. Do you have enough to say for 100 episodes? If you do, that's great, because that's going to spark, over that time, you're going to spark new conversations and new information. If you can't do 10 episodes, if you can't record 10 episodes and launch those 10 episodes, then maybe don't do it. Or maybe you have other priorities to do it. But record 10, release those 10, and then and while you're at it, think about the first 100 content. And then, because
it's really the long game. And this is really, everything that you're saying is such a lesson in marketing 101, right? The touch points, because even before thinking about, because, a lot of my audience is entrepreneurs that already have an offer, but they do have podcasts, and the whole goal is to disseminate the message that has to do with the offer. But why not, if you know your audience really well, add in products that are helpful and that are a good resource, right? And to make money off of that. So that's really great. But I think, to the point of marketing 101, is there has to be touch points. And I love that you said we look at their social media. So it's not just the podcast that's doing the job. It's a whole campaign, which is the same thing when you're thinking, you're an entrepreneur and you're selling some kind of offer or product. You're not just going to talk about it on your podcast. You need to have a website. You need to be in multiple platforms. Sometimes you may be even running ads in some of those platforms. Your email campaigns, all of it. It's never just one, because it's touch points. And like you said, let's pray.
And we have some podcasters that say, hey, I have all these other areas on my platform, but I just want to sell advertising on my podcast. And I say, no worries. We can do that. But we're only going to see X amount of return here, or you're only going to see X amount. And so I'm a huge statistical data buff. Everything has to have an ROI. Yes. Even with our podcasters, hey, if you're gonna record this ad, right? Think of what your time is worth to record this ad. Do you actually think that your audience is going to engage with this? Is this actually something that they've asked for? And how many times do we see health experts or influencers, they post a video and somebody's like, what shirt are you wearing? What's that thing in the background of your video, right? Those are like the most impactful things, because your audience is already asking for what you're using, what product you're using, or what this looks like. Lean into it and feel free and say, actually, this is the thing. And, feel free to use my code if you want to save some money, whatever that looks like. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that, right? With saying like, hey, this is something that I use. It's when you bring something out of left field that it's like, I've never spoken about this. I've never talked about this. And then all of a sudden I want you to buy it. So those are the things that don't work.
Yeah. So for someone listening that is like, this is all very interesting information and I want next steps, tell us how typically you engage with people to know where they're at and how you can support them. I know you have some free resources. Walk us through.
Absolutely. So on our website, category3.ca, because we're Canadian.ca, category 3, we have some free resources there. We have some guides. We even have a mastermind program called Next Level Podcasters. It has its own nextlevelpodcasters.ca as well. And it's a mastermind program that we host every month with implementation workshops, different content themes, literally the step-by-step process of where your content is at, how is it working, what are your revenue goals, and then really how do you lean into affiliate as well as monetization.
Nice.
We take you through goal setting because that's always the number one question. You know, where should I be? Where should I be? Everyone has a should be place that's different.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I love about, Next Level Podcasters, and of course I'm totally biased because it's my program, but I love because, you're creating your own roadmap, right? Nothing, there's so many wonderful information that we have out there. We have incredible speaking coaches, we have incredible marketing coaches, all these things, right? But ultimately you're taking all that information to create your own roadmap. So what is hard, of course, in podcasting is when somebody says, here's everything you have to do. Here's the roadmap. That's somebody else's roadmap. It's not your roadmap necessarily. So take wonderful pieces from all the different areas. And that's what we do in Next Level. So this is the numbers that we're looking for. This is how you should be looking at your podcast. 99% of our podcasters don't know their actual downloads. So a lot of people think, well, I have 9 million downloads of my podcast. That's a cool number. It's a really cool number. It's a great number, but it actually doesn't mean your engagement. It actually doesn't say how many listeners you have or downloads. So step one, let's find our numbers. So you're looking for your downloads per episode in the first 30 days. And there's lots of different things, right? If you're on Spotify for creators, you're going to see listens, plus you're going to see downloads, plus you're going to see streams. You're looking for the overarching number because you want to see what's on Apple, what's on Spotify, any of your streams that are coming into your platform. You want to see your monthly downloads. It's a great number as well. It doesn't necessarily say your per new episode, and that's actually what you're putting ads on at this point is your new episodes. So again, we're looking for downloads per episode in the first 30 days. And then we're looking at consumption rates. So that's one that a lot of people never ever look at. And your platform will show you your consumption rate. Sometimes you have to dig for it. Megaphones is like front and center. You can see it. Consumption is how much of your episode your audience is actually listening to. So for example, if your audience is only listening to 25%, right? So if you have 90% of your audience is only listening to 25% of your podcast, you have an hour-long podcast, they're only listening to 15 minutes. That's a problem. Like, we really got to get that up. The best podcasts in the world have an 85% consumption rate. 85%. And so that's your new goal. Let's get to 85%, because at 85%, you have pre-rolls, you can have a mid-roll, and they're being listened to. At 25%, if you have only 15 minutes and maybe you're already doing affiliate ads, and so you have some affiliate ads at the beginning, they're listening to more ads than actual content. And maybe they're off put by that. There's a few different areas to take a look at, but we're looking at consumption and we're looking at those numbers. A lot of podcasters say, hey, well, I'm just going to put an ad into post roll. So an ad that lives at the very end of your episode. Well, if your audience is only listening to 15 minutes, they're not getting anywhere near a post roll. So that's also incredibly difficult too. If you're an entrepreneur, you have your own offerings and you believe them at the end of your episode, they're not listening to even your ads, let alone anything else you have. Your post roll is meant for, thanks for listening. Here's my affiliate disclaimer for FTC guidelines. And here's my medical disclaimer if I'm in the medical field. That's it. If you want people to like you, share you, put it in the first pre-roll. Put it in the very first beginning. Please leave me a review. Please share this with somebody who X, Y, and Z. It would help. Put all of those offerings in the very beginning.
Nice. Oh my gosh, so many amazing tips. Thank you so much. You're giving it all. I love it. All the more encouragement to go check out the resources that you have. I'll make sure and put all the links in the show notes for the Next Level and also for the main website, and people can check it out. Before I ask you how people can connect with you individually, if that's a possibility, I like asking all my guests my $1 million question. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Bev, what is an empowered woman to you?
An empowered woman is someone who trailblazes their own path. And I mean, to know who I am would be like if you kind of knew like who I was in the past, you'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. Like an empowered woman is someone who creates her own path, is a solution finder, and creates her own success. 100%. And because I grew up with a single mom, because I've always, just done everything on my own, I'm that like hyperactive millennial that's like, don't worry, I can do it all. I can do it myself. I don't need any help, right? And my friends would say, yep, that's definitely who she is. But that's my vision of an empowered woman is create your own pathway, create your own success, and never give up.
Yes. Oh, I love that. That's so good. Well, how can people connect with you? Are you hanging out anywhere, LinkedIn or Instagram for them to connect?
Yeah, you bet. You bet. Yeah, I'm Bev Hampson on LinkedIn. My Instagram is Category 3 Media. So you can always check us out there, especially if you want to see like our Rolodex of what other podcasts we work on. We love to share our podcasters' content all the time. We spend a lot of time with them. And you can always see if there's anyone there. If you want to connect, especially if you're, a podcaster yourself, you want to learn more, hit me up for a discovery call. I'm always happy to chat with anyone all the time about podcasting. I don't care if you have 2 downloads of your podcast. Like, let's talk about it. 2 downloads means you've got so much potential. You've got so much to do. And I love setting people up for success. Nothing is harder than meeting a podcaster who's been, 7 years down the line, has 1,000, episodes and says, okay, what do I do now? And I'm like, oh, okay, we have all this content. We have all these things. And I love setting podcasts up for success. I brokered a lot of podcast sales, which is great because you can sell your podcast eventually, but you got to set it up for success if you want to sell it. And so I love to make sure that our podcasts are, hey, this is what you need for, the next few years. And a lot of people don't think about that. Think about your podcast like a business. Yeah, it's a passion. It seems like a passion project right now, but what if it was your, 7-figure business that you're running every year? And what would you normally do with a 7-figure business? You don't just close up shop one day. You think about your exit strategy or what you're going to do or what your legacy is going to be.
Absolutely.
So think of your podcast that way too.
Oh my gosh, so much good information, so many gold nuggets. Thank you so much for sharing with us, and thank you for the work that you're doing out there. I appreciate it.
Perfect. Thanks, Marta. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope this episode empowered you. And if you enjoyed the show, please join the Empowered Woman community on Facebook and share with friends or leave a review on iTunes so more people can discover this empowering message. Until next time, bye.